I am unbelievably excited to finally be starting the Legacy of Kain series on the channel. Soul Reaver and Blood Omen are probably some of my favorite game series of all time, masterfully creating a dark fantasy adventure with a gripping narrative and memorable characters. I've always had a particular weak spot for the fantasy setting, but add in mature themes, brilliant voice acting, and compelling storytelling, and you have the recipe for a truly spectacular series. Despite my love for Legacy of Kain, the series is one I have not replayed since my first time all those years ago, which, looking at a calendar, the final entry in the series, Defiance, released over 20 years ago. I feel old. I still have the physical copy of it though, carried it with me through 5 moves and 3 provinces at this point. Regardless, it's held a place in my memory and was a big influence on the tastes I have in gaming and media to this day. Definitely a series that has kept the closeted goth part of myself alive. I hope you'll join me as we go back to 1996 and see the birth of one of gaming's most memorable anti-heroes, the one and only Kain.
They, victors. Suffering to the conquered. Ironic that now I was the one suffering. Not anything as pedestrian as physical pain, rather the cruel jab of impotent anger. The hunger for revenge. I didn't care if I was in heaven or hell. All I wanted was to kill my assassins. Sometimes you get what you wish for.
My first introduction to this series was actually not the first game, but instead Blood Omen 2 for the Xbox. Funnily enough, Blood Omen 2 is widely considered to take place in an alternate timeline or universe to the other games. This is sort of a retcon, as the team that worked on Blood Omen 2 was different than those that worked on the Soul Reaver series. But, as this is a game series that has a heavy emphasis on time travel and fate, it fits into the greater narrative quite well. The title we're covering today, the original Blood Omen, is the one that kicked off the entire series. It was the only entry developed by Silicon Knights and was produced by Crystal Dynamics. Later entries would be developed directly by Crystal Dynamics, and I think that distinction can be heavily seen in the gameplay on offer here in the original title. While later entries would employ a third-person action RPG style, this initial offering would take place in a top-down isometric viewpoint. I talk about Diablo too much on this channel, but in a vaguely Diablo-esque perspective.
Diablo. Gosh darn.
My strongest memories of this series are of an action-heavy hack-and-slash RPG, and the developers did a fine job including plenty of action here despite the limiting viewport. By the end of your journey, you would master multiple transformations, a half-dozen weapons, and a bevy of spells and abilities. This game does a great job making sure things don't get stale from start to finish. The premise for this story that would eventually span ages was actually fairly simple, and based on something I think all humans have at least some familiarity with: revenge. We cold open the game to a meeting of sorcerers in a council chamber. But before long, they're under attack by a powerful vampire. The sorcerer's power is nothing in the face of the monster liquefying their flesh with a mere wave of his hand, and they call desperately for their protector, Malik. But Malik arrives too late. Everyone is already dead, and on his own, he is also defeated by the powerful vampire lord assaulting their ranks. He gets a nasty bonk on the noggin. Not an honorable defeat. Malik is punished for his failure by having his soul removed from his flesh and attached to his armor, forever making him little more than a metal slave whose only purpose is servitude and protection of the remaining circle of mages. We cut to see a woman slain by an unseen hand, and following her death, we see the pillars of Nosgoth begin to crumble. There are many questions here that we'll discover the answers to in time, but for now, we cut to our protagonist, Kain. At this point, a noble human traveling and looking for little more than a drink at the local pub. The barkeep is closing up shop, however. Times are dark, and being open late is folly for any sum of gold. This is proven accurate, as we're accosted and killed by bandits on our way outside of the pub. After being thoroughly run through by brigands, we awaken in a fiery pit that can only be hell, unsure of the fate that will await us. Blood Omen can best be described as an isometric hack-and-slash ARPG with light Metroidvania elements. And for a title developed so early on the PS1, the amount of gameplay options you have are frankly staggering. You have different weapons, from your basic iron sword, all the way up to Kain's iconic weapon, the Soul Reaver. Each weapon you unlock has a very specific purpose. For example, the mace does garbage damage, but can stun human opponents, opening them up to be drained of blood. It also serves to destroy some stone barricades, opening hidden paths and revealing treasures. The axes do massive damage, and have a special whirlwind attack that can decimate your foes, but prevent spell casting. They can also be used to fell trees blocking your path. Kain doesn't have much respect for nature. You also have multiple armors, each with a different effect, from things like thorns, reduced damage, and even limited undead immunity. The great thing about the weapons and armors from a game design perspective is that there's no straight upgrades. Each item has a specific time and place where it's most appropriate. With maybe the one exception of the iron armor, I found myself switching back to the early items frequently, even into the end game. On the more magical side, you have both spells and abilities. Your spells are one-time use items that you find throughout the game. Each pickup is worth one use of the spell. They cost no mana, but are a finite resource. We have things from skin-flaying projectiles, to violent implosion and acidic sprays, to more utility spells such as infinite mana or poison cure. The most valuable of these items are the Hearts of Darkness. Each of these acts similarly to an extra life, resurrecting you with a small amount of health when you die. They can also be used while alive to give slightly more health. Abilities are your more innate vampire powers that you develop throughout the game, and are cast using your pool of available power. Here we have things like ranged blood drain, stun spells, magical bolts, spell immunity, and even mind control. Also in your repertoire is the ability to take multiple forms, each with a different use. Outside our standard vampire form, we can become a werewolf, able to jump and sprint, a swarm of bats, used for travel, a human disguise, used to glean information and progress the story, and lastly, the form of mist, allowing you to pass through bars and travel over otherwise deadly water. Each of these forms slowly drain your power while you occupy them. Both your health and power pools can be increased permanently through the finding of pickups, of which there are plenty for those with a wary eye. Your power slowly regenerates over time, but your health does the opposite. We are a vampire with an insatiable need for blood, so not feeding means you'll slowly wither away. There are parts of the game where this is a real problem. One that stands out in particular is Malik's Sanctuary, where the Guardians are as lifeless as he is, meaning blood is going to be very hard to find. There are whole swaths of the game like this, where you ride near the line of life and death continuously in search of some food source. It's balanced in a great way to really make the player realize that blood is life for a vampire. You feel genuine relief when you have been exploring a dungeon for some time, low on life, and hear the telltale scream of a prisoner just waiting for your fangs. The game probably stands out as one of the best in my mind for balancing when you earn new powers and abilities. You feel so weak at the start, scrambling to conquer a couple of brigands for a few drops of blood. And by the end of the game, you're draining entire rooms of their vitae, simultaneously reflecting hostile magic attacks back at their wielders, and taking a phone call about your car's extended warranty. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Last we saw Kain, he was chained in a fiery hellscape, awaiting his fate in the afterlife. Let's see how that's going for him. That sword sticking through our chest is a real downer. But we're offered a choice by the necromancer Mortanius. We can wallow here in hell, or he can raise us up to seek the revenge we so desire. Being a man of passion, Kain leaps at the opportunity to seek out and destroy his would-be assassins without really understanding the cost. The cost being our very life, as we're risen as a fledgling vampire. Our little awakening crypt serves as a quick tutorial on the basics of the game. We find a few spells, learn the importance of blood to survival, and even murder some poor graveyard keepers just trying to feed their families. I wonder if the gravekeepers get a chance at revenge. Probably not. No respect for blue-collar workers in Nosgoth. Moving outside, we learn that vampires don't like water, taking some mild damage from the rain. This is a cool mechanic, and it's worth pointing out here that bloodomen has a fully functioning weather as well as day and night system. An absolutely great addition to give that moody gothic vibe. Before long, we catch up to the group of bandits that stole our life from us, and quickly deliver that justice we so desired. Surrounded by the corpses of the fallen, Mortanius contacts us to let us know our revenge is not yet complete. These brigands were the tools of our death, but not the masterminds behind it. He points us north to the Pillars of Nosgoth to find our answers. Before reaching the Pillars, we make a stopover at a nearby village. Villages are always a welcome sight in an RPG, but in Blood Omen, the reason for that is different. We aren't excited to peruse the blacksmith's wares, or replenish our supplies. We aren't a noble hero on a quest to save the princess from an evil dragon. We're a bloodthirsty vampire. We absolutely decimate the village, draining the unsuspecting villagers of their blood and robbing them blind. Times are tough for the peasant class of Nosgoth. Don't worry though, Kain doesn't discriminate based on class, and the social elite will face our bloodlust before too long.
Help! I need help! It's locked. I need help!
Ve Victus!
Arriving at the Pillars of Nosgoth, we find it haunted by the spirit of Ariel, who just happens to be the woman we saw murdered in the opening cinematic. She gives us a brief history on the importance of the Pillars. They exist to seal the material plane from the spectral and demon planes of existence, and each of these 9 pillars has a guardian that is responsible for maintaining their pillar, ensuring the seal stays strong and defend our world. Unfortunately, when Ariel was murdered by an unseen traitor in the Circle, her lover, Nupraptor, was driven mad, even going so far as to sew his eyes shut in his grief. Metal as hell, but not so good for the Circle. Nupraptor, being the guardian of the mind, was able to influence the other members of the Circle of 9 and push each member into a state of dementia. With their mental states waning, the pillars have begun to crack and crumble, weakening the seals between the worlds. Ariel goes on to state that the only way to restore the pillars is to kill each of the guardians. Of course, Kain cares very little for the fate of Nosgoth at this point, merely wishing to be released from the curse of vampirism. Ariel gets him on board to help by stating that he'll only find peace when the pillars are restored. We'll find out later that Kain and Ariel have very different definitions of finding peace, but for now, we have a mission: kill some insane sorcerers. Before long, we get our first transformation into the form of a werewolf, and use it to access our first blood fountain. These giant monolithic underground fonts of blood are always a welcome sight. On a first use, they'll heal you to max and give you a permanent upgrade. Greed will be punished, however. Multiple uses will actually damage your health. This one in particular gives us the ability to push small stones, but they can give benefits ranging from increased power regen, to rain immunity, to better transformations. It's a great way to build some excitement when entering a cave, knowing it may contain one of these things. I also have to wonder, who the hell built these things? They are huge, and the skulls up there certainly aren't human. I don't even know how they got them through the door to the cave. Moving on, we gain the human disguise from a group of gypsies and use it to move through the fortified village beneath Nupraptor's lair. And what a lair it is! I don't think it was just his lover's death that drove this dude insane. Like, his house is a giant skull on a mountaintop. This guy was a villain long before someone killed his lady friend. At the end of his lair, we can actually look out the eye sockets of the big mountain skull. One shows the world as it is, green and lush, and the other shows it as a fiery hellscape. One wonders if this is a glimpse at what the world will become with the destruction of the pillars. We find Nupraptor and Malik, the disembodied protector of the Circle, at the heart of the keep. Nupraptor dismisses the warrior, stating he would not need any assistance to stop us. How wrong he was. The boss fight here is alright. You need to move up and down the screen, avoiding Nupraptor's slow-moving orbs. I don't know how he thought this would bring us agony and suffering. We literally had a sword through our chest like 20 minutes ago. This is a walk in the park in comparison. We bring his head back to the pillars, and just like that, 1 of 9 is restored. The remaining pillars will not be nearly as easy to reclaim. we need to tackle the Malik problem. Napraptor refused his assistance, but we'll need to deal with the disembodied protector before the rest of the circle can be faced. In his cursed state, he is sworn to their protection, and I don't think the others will be insane enough to dismiss them as Napraptor did. We make our way far to the north, to Malik's Bastion. For a guy who is literally just a living set of armor, he has a pretty sick palace. A big castle suspended on a pillar of stone. Good thing we can turn into a swarm of bats and fly up, or this would have been a really tough climb. That's the downside of medieval defenses. They are great at repelling land-based peasant revolts, but never factor in an aerial threat. Making our way through the bastion, we come face to face with Malik at the end. The fight here is a good test of your ability to dodge blows and kite an enemy. Though I have to say, I probably would have lost to Malik if he fought like a normal person and stopped trying to show off with his stupid spin attack over and over again. His whirling dervish style makes him super easy to avoid. All form, no function. Despite our martial prowess, Malik isn't ready to give up and chases us away with a blast of energy. Looks like taking him down won't be so easy a task as we thought. We need more information on how to deal with this problem. So we head east to seek the lair of an oracle in the mountains. Just before reaching the oracle, we find a book with some more information on Malik. He is the last member of an order called the Seraphan, devoted to killing vampires and undead of all kinds. Explains why the warrior was so adept at repelling us, but not much help in our quest. So we move on to the Oracle's chamber. The Oracle, for seemingly no reason, spends like a solid 30 seconds casting shade at King Otmar, then moves on to answering our questions. He doesn't have a solution for dealing with Malik, but points us to Vorador, another vampire who's bested Malik in the past. If it's not yet obvious, Vorador is the vampire we saw destroying Magi at the onset of our quest. We are to follow the green flames to seek him out. Moving through the swamplands of Nosgoth, we reach Vorador's manor. The place is a nightmare to navigate through, but Vorador himself proves a perfect host once we arrive. He gives us a new perspective on our vampiric state, stating it not to be a curse, but a blessing, and that humans only exist as sacrifice to fuel our supernatural ability. I don't think Kain is fully convinced by Vorador's words, but he is at least beginning to see that vampirism isn't the curse he thought it was. He gives some context to the opening cinematic from earlier, stating he attacked the Circle as vengeance for them starting a holy war on vampires. There is a real theme here. Everything in this plot is motivated by revenge. It's impossible to see who is justified and who is a victim. Maybe everyone is a victim in the end. Once we get to the time travel aspects of this story, the lines between good and evil blur even more. That's right, if you're new to the series, not only are we a noble vampire back from the dead on a quest for vengeance, but we also travel through space and time, creating all sorts of paradoxes along the way. We'll get to that soon enough. In the present time, Vorador gives us his signet ring and says he'll come to our aid next we meet Malik. He considers himself our better in every way, but says he finds our activities amusing and would hate to see us sent into oblivion. Very handy to have a pocket ancient vampire if we need him. A bit directionless after leaving the manor, Mortanius conveniently reaches out to let us know a trio of members from the Circle have congregated far to the north. They're using their powers not to help the land as they had an oath to do, but instead to twist and pervert it into their own design. The place we're headed is Dark Eden, a place of fire and brimstone filled with disturbing lab experiments, human-insect hybrids, and worse. We get a new armor here that I have to imagine is a troll by the developers. It's a flesh armor that auto-drains blood from our enemies without having to manually feed. The problem is, pretty much all these monstrosities have acid blood, so draining them with this armor on is little more than a surefire way to poison ourselves. What is it with game devs and their love for poison? I'm looking at you, Miyazaki. Anyway, at the end of this place we come to those responsible for this mess. Bane the Druid, Dejewel the Energist, and Anacroth the Alchemist. Malik appears at the behest of the Alchemist, who uses the opportunity to escape. Even with the Alchemist gone, this fight is still 3-on-1, so we summon our new friend Vorador to even the odds. He takes on Malik while we rush after the now fleeing Druid and Energist. The fight with them is interesting. The druid will jump around the map making zones of damaging water you must avoid, while the energist rains down lightning from above. The battle is a matter of taking down the constantly moving druid before he can totally flood the map, then using some lightning of our own to destroy the energist from a range. Rushing back to assist Vorador with Malik, we find it to be unnecessary. Malik's corpse can be found destroyed in the middle of the room. I actually thought this scene was going to be a bait and switch, with Malik rising to fight me one final time, or perhaps returning later. But this was really it. A very prominent character for the first half of the game died an off-screen death, and I can't feel as though I've been robbed. One of the few story beats in this game that left me feeling unsatisfied. I wanted my rematch.
Sad.
Ah well. With the 3 deaths, we now have 4 of the pillars restored. Ariel directs us to Avernus next. There we can find another member of the Circle, as well as some powerful artifacts to help us on our quest. Arriving at the castle city of Avernus, we find it heavily besieged by demons. Looks like those planar barriers are failing more than we thought. We fight through the war zone until we reach the central cathedral. To be honest, fighting my way through the city was one of the more atmospheric parts of the game for me. Coming up to squabbles between the demons and humans, seeing the burning wreckage, and ducking through cellars to navigate the blasted out ruins was a really good time. Challenging too, with demon blood being poisoned to drink. In the cathedral, we find the demons have not breached this far, at least not in our plane of existence. This whole level has us bouncing between planes of existence in and out of demon-filled vestibules as we clear our way through. This part was also quite interesting in concept, but really frustrating to navigate in practice. In a maze of 20 teleporters, remembering where each one goes becomes an exercise in frustration before too long. Doesn't help either that the demon side is filled with these low-budget Diablo clones, and they respawn each time you enter the room. My best recommendation is to avoid fighting them altogether, and just outpace them in the werewolf form. Either way, we earn some great prizes here. First is the Soul Reaver, Kain's iconic sword and the most powerful melee weapon in the game. By Kain's own admission, the origin of the blade is lost to time, but it exists with the raw desire to feed on the souls of those it strikes. In practice, the sword acts as a very long-ranged melee weapon that does damage based on how much power you have. It is supremely powerful with a fully charged strike, and especially useful on the next boss coming up. But I have to admit I didn't use this sword all that much. I just found it better to use my power on other spells and stick to my flame sword in most cases. Still, super cool find lore-wise. Next we find the Wraith Armor, another sort of mixed bag piece of equipment. It makes any damage you take be split with your power bar. So essentially you now take 50% less damage, but your power is drained each time you're hit. I used it for a time, but again, it's easier to heal than to recover power, so really I would rather not use my limited power supplies on this. The room we find the Wraith Armor in is really cool though. I'm pretty sure the skeleton chained in the middle is what's left of Malik after removing his soul from his body. Grim. Moving to the end, we come to Azimuth, our next circle member. As someone who occasionally installs satellite dishes for my day job, I can only see her name as a reference to the angle you point a satellite dish at to achieve peak signal.
Greetings, Command.
We knock the satellite witch into oblivion with a single swing of Soul Reaver. On our way out of the cathedral, we find a time streaming device. We won't be using it yet, but it will be useful before long. Returning to the pillars, Ariel says a new threat has emerged and will need to be dealt with before we can face the circle again. A warlord named the Nemesis has been rising in power and steadily conquering all of Nosgoth. The Nemesis was once a ruler known as William the Just, but as his power and influence grew, he became corrupt and now seeks to rule all with an iron fist. The only kingdom left to stand against his horde is that of Willendorf, ruled by King Otmar. The ineffectual ruler the Oracle was randomly insulting a while back. Looks like we're going to go play diplomat. Arriving in Willendorf, we force our way into an audience with the king by insulting a nobleman with what I think is the best insult I've ever heard.
Out of my way, peasant! The stench of the fields hangs over you like a pall.
The king says no.
It turns out the king is upset as his daughter's soul was stolen by an evil doll maker. I mean, that is a bummer, but more than just the princess are going to be lost if he doesn't get out of his funk. We aren't much for rousing speeches, so I guess the best solution here is to get her soul back. We have a doll maker to visit. Entering the doll maker's lair, this place is just completely unique when compared to anything else in the game. Creepy music, living dolls, and cunning traps litter this place. Coming to the end, the doll maker himself is a pitiful sort and we separate his head from his body while he whines about something or other. We find the princess's soul entrapped within a doll, bring it back, and get the king into our debt. He offers his kingdom as a reward, but instead we ask for his army to march on the Nemesis. The battle is joined, but before long it becomes clear that even with the assistance of Willendorf, the armies of the Nemesis are just too overpowering. King Otmar is killed in battle, and with our end not far away, we activate the time streaming device to escape just in time. We awaken in a much nicer area, and overhear a familiar looking character giving a rousing speech to a horde of villagers. Who is this and where have we seen him before? I'm sure we'll find out soon. In the meantime, we need to figure out when we are. It doesn't take too long to realize we're still in Nosgoth, but some 50 years prior. Before William the Just became the Nemesis. Before he had an unstoppable army. Well, we didn't plan for this, but we may as well make the best of it and destroy him while we can. Fighting through the castle, we overhear a conversation between William and the robed man from earlier. His name is Mobius, and he's given William a soul reaver of his own. Aren't time travel plots fun? Now we have an epic soul reaver duel. Well, sadly not really. Starting the fight with William, it was actually probably the most challenging of the game. He hits really hard and has a stupid amount of health. I found Soul Reaver was a bit slow to damage him without taking hits in return, so I relied on the Flame Sword for most of the fight. With William's death, we find another time streaming device in the next room, and Kain aptly points out that it seems an odd coincidence. Regardless, we use it to return to our timeline, one now devoid of the Nemesis. Leaving the now destroyed ruins of William's castle, we come to a courtyard where a crowd of people are thronging around a guillotine, led by none other than Mobius, or as he's better known, Mobius the Time Streamer. Kain finally realized that this Mobius is the oracle that set our quest in motion some time ago, and it seems the whole plot was a way to get William the Just out of the way so he could instead focus the will of the people on hunting vampires. Speaking of, it looks like the poor victim of the guillotine is our old friend Vorador. We're helpless to stop them as he is beheaded, and Mobius turns the crowd on us next. Lucky for us, we're more than equipped to deal with some angry peasants. We chase Mobius around the courtyard for a time while he summons enemies from different time periods. He even finishes the fight by summoning a version of us from the future we must vanquish. But we prove the superior Kain. With his plans exposed and minions vanquished, Mobius has little recourse but to accept Kain separating his head from his body. Get wrecked, Time Wizard. Mortanius the Necromancer has been tracking our progress, and informs us that we should return to the Pillars to finish this long and grim quest. Upon arriving, both Mortanius and Anacroth the Alchemist are there. It turns out this entire operation was orchestrated by Mortanius. He is the one that killed Ariel, setting in motion the events to crumble the Circle of Nine, who he viewed as failing their duties. He then raised you, the vampire Kain, to go and destroy the Circle of Nine to restore the Pillars. He kills Anacroth for us, but seems to forget that he is also a member of the Circle and must be destroyed. We annihilate his human form, but this causes him to transition to the form of the Unspoken. A clearly demonic entity seems to have been controlling Mortanius. There won't be much more explanation as to why he became a demon, at least not in this entry, but Kain cares not. With a cry of Ve Victus, he charges the demon and sends it back to hell where it belongs. Not to totally derail myself, but I didn't know where else to work into the video that Ve Victus is Kain's signature battle cry. And if you're a fan of the series and always wondered what this means, it's Latin for Woe to the Conquered. Pretty badass war cry if you ask me. Maybe if I start yelling this at my office job, it'll get me the recognition I deserve.
Ve Victus!
Oh, scary! Shut up, man!
Maybe not. It's here, with the circle nearly restored, that we have our final revelation. We are the guardian of the last pillar, the pillar of balance. The only way to restore the circle would be to sacrifice ourselves to the pillars. Anything less would mean the shattering of the veil between the planes, possibly forever. You can choose to do this, be the hero and save Nosgoth. But let's be real, Kain is not a good person concerned with the welfare of this dying world. He never has been. This entire quest has been a self-serving pursuit of release from his curse. But now at this late stage, it isn't even that. Kain has embraced what Vorador taught him. Vampires exist to rule over the human cattle, and he will rule this world or watch it burn. In making our decision, we see that the pillars have collapsed, possibly forever, as we sit upon a throne of bones, drinking a chalice of blood, and celebrating our new dark kingdom. Believe it or not, it's actually pretty difficult to find negative reviews on this one. The game is a beloved classic, and just about anyone seeking it out is going to do so because they love the series like I do. The thing most will complain about in a modern context is just how hard it is to get this running on a modern machine, which is completely fair. That said, I did some digging and found a couple of wild takes that I would love to argue with for my own satisfaction. Hasn't aged all that well. Title says it all, really. This game is very much a relic of its time. The over-the-top voice acting is still great, but the actual game itself just isn't very much fun to play in this day and age. The voice acting is absolutely top-notch in this game, so they've won me over a bit there. But the old trope of saying a game hasn't aged well here is just factually incorrect. The game has a bit of a rough start. Learning how everything works takes a bit, especially with the very unique playstyle this game offers. But once you're a couple hours in, things really swing upward. You have so many options for gameplay, and while the combat has a bit of jank to it, it's a reliable sort of jank. So once you learn how things work, you just need to play within those confines and you can have a really good time. The story is handled amazingly well, with clearly marked monologue points that Kain would stand on and dump lore. And with the aforementioned superb voice acting, it is hard not to get engrossed in the world Silicon Knights created. I can sympathize with the graphics being a bit dated, straddling the line of charming pixel art and ugly muddled mess, but saying there's no fun to be had here makes it feel like we didn't play the same game. What a stupid game. I have this game on PS1. You just walk around all the time while getting no clue whatsoever to do, while the enemies respawning all the time, no purpose, way too difficult, no logic in gameplay. If you want to play a good game like this, play Soulbringer. Again, I feel like this individual didn't play the same game I did. I truly don't know how you could get lost in this game. Yes, it is open world, and there is a lot of exploration to be had, but the game is surprisingly linear when it comes to the story. So as long as you keep moving through map screens, you're likely going in the correct direction. On a grander scale, what you need to be doing is spelled out in the first 30 minutes of gameplay. You need to kill the Circle of Nine and bring their artifacts back to the pillars. That's the whole game. Your journey certainly takes you on some twists and turns along the way, but either Kain or Ariel are going to tell you exactly where to go and what you should be doing 99% of the time. The only way I can imagine someone would miss this would be if they played with the sound off. Areas of interest are even highlighted on the world map if you get truly lost. It's not the glowing quest markers of current-day RPGs, but it's more than sufficient to get your feet under you. I'm not going to continue to harp on the same points, but while difficulty is a subjective thing, saying Blood Omen is difficult is a real stretch. Each Heart of Darkness essentially acts as a free life, and you can have up to 99 of them at any time. I pretty well always had more than 20, and I really didn't play particularly carefully. I can see having some trouble mastering the combat, but you have so many powers and healing systems, it just feels factually incorrect to call this title hard. I will say though, I have never heard of Soulbringer before, and looking it up, it looks right up my alley. So at least I'll thank the reviewer for that recommendation. There isn't a lot more to say here. Blood Omen kicked off what is, in my opinion, one of the best Gothic RPGs in existence. As an opening title to the series, I could not have asked for more. The game world is rich and immersive, the gameplay is varied and engaging, and the story is truly one of a kind, with voice acting and sound design that is unmatched by much else on the market even today. The story did a wonderful job subverting expectations. What starts as a man's quest for vengeance turns into a time-streaming epic as we ascend in power and prestige. The game even sets it up to be a basic Zelda clone, making it seem as though the game will consist of tracking down each of the 9 members of the Circle in their 9 separate dungeons, but turns that completely on its head, sending the player into political intrigue, wars between men and demons alike, and ultimately culminating in a decision to destroy the world, truly embracing your new dark gifts and taking your place as a god among men. I will end the video saying that I am absolutely fired up to continue playing through this series. I generally take a break between games in a series for my videos, but this one has grasped my attention so thoroughly that I imagine I'll be sitting down with Soul Reaver before too long to continue unraveling the legacy of Kain. Vae Victus. See you in the next video.